So this is Praia do Sol, it's sunset, and I'm here to do star trails. This is one of the darkest places we can find in the Lisbon area. It's right on the coast, facing southwestish. It's one of the most westerly points in Europe. There's still quite a lot of light pollution over from Cascais, just over there. We're going to try anyway. There's also a little bit of haze in the sky, but not a lot of cloud. So we're going to wait until after the sun's gone down, which should be in about a minute or so. And then I'll probably do a background shot to try to get some detail in the foreground rocks and the rock stacks. And then after that, we'll just wait for it to get properly dark and see if we can get the stars. Now, because we're facing southwest, that's the direction of the Milky Way tonight, hopefully. And I'm going to try to capture them by shooting with a high ISO. I'm not sure what I'm going to need yet, but it'll be somewhere around ISO 3200. I've got a super fast lens on. This is an f2.8 14mm wide angle, so I'm going to shoot wide open at f2.8, and then maybe a shutter time of about 30 seconds. Now, longer than that, and we start to get, if I can get the stars, they'll start to blur because they'll be moving across the sky. Exposure is longer than 30 seconds, then you start to see the movement. What I want to do is get the stars nice and sharp, so the fastest exposure I can get, which will be about 30 seconds, at the same time trying to get as much light in as possible, which is why wide open ISO, f2.8, and a high ISO of 3200, 2000, 3200. So let's see if we can get something. So I'm trying to compose now, because I'm going to try and shoot this as a video. I'm shooting in landscape format. Normally I'd shoot stars in portrait because it means I can get more sky in, but I'm going to try and shoot this as a time lapse. Obviously portrait format doesn't work well on video. It has to be landscape, which means I get fewer stars in. So to compensate that, I'm going to have less foreground. That's how much I'd do if I was shooting a photo. Beautiful scene, but because I'm going to be trying to shoot the stars, probably going to pull the camera back a little bit and just mostly have the sky filling as much of the frame as possible. Let's see, something around there. Now, just after the sun had gone down, I realized that the composition that I'd set up wasn't actually going to work because the Milky Way was coming over a little bit more to the west than I'd anticipated, and there was no way I was going to be able to fit it into this composition with these two rocks. So I was going to have to change composition and find something else that would work. But before that, I had been shooting a time lapse, and I did manage to get this very brief time lapse where you can see Venus, which is the really bright star, just setting behind the rock before I had to find something that would actually work with the Milky Way. Now, composing in the dark is never really a particularly good idea. It also meant that I was unable to get any detail in the rocks because the blue hour had passed when I was framing for the shot. So what I decided to do is see if I could find two really strong silhouettes of the cliffs that I could see to sort of frame the shot, creating a U that the Milky Way with the Milky Way in it. Now the way that I framed in the dark is by putting the camera at a very high ISO of 10,000, which allowed me to be able to take quick shots and compose through trial and error until I had the composition that I liked, which was this one. However, even when I'd done the shot, I still wasn't quite happy. I felt the image needed something a little bit extra, so I decided to give the image some scale by climbing onto the top of one of the rocks myself, as you can see here. And now climbing up in the dark, it's quite challenging. It's about a 5 or 6 meter high pinnacle of rock, and I just had the head torch. So it wasn't that easy, but fortunately I was with a friend, so if I'd had any slip or a fall, then I wouldn't have been alone and there'd have been someone else who could call the police or the Coast Guard or whatever. Now, if I hadn't been alone, I would have had to frame this by shooting time-lapse, shooting with the intervalometer on the camera, shooting continuous shots. But being with a friend, I was able to shout to him when I wanted him to click the shutter. I still felt the image missed something, so I wanted to try something else, which was using the head torch to shining up onto the cliffs opposite and to where I thought the Milky Way, where I thought the Milky Way would appear in the picture. So it appears that the Milky Way is kind of in front of the torch, and I'm lighting up the Milky Way with the torch. Now, when it comes to post-processing these shots, there's a few things that I do to try to bring out the Milky Way. So first of all, here's the image in Lightroom with the adjustments that I've made to it. You can look over here on the right
one of the first things that I did was to just increase the color temperature a little bit, because the image was very blue, and there's also a bit of a green tinge, so I pushed the tint a little bit into the magenta to take away there. I decreased the exposure and then pushed up the contrast quite a lot. The shadows I pulled down to make the night sky darker, while pushing the whites and the blacks up, which is just another way of increasing the contrast. Now, on a regular landscape image, something that I've taken at sunset or at sunrise, I don't really do much in Lightroom, but because this is an image where basically you're really only working with extreme contrasts, I'm not going to be looking at things like midtones, then I'll do a lot more in Lightroom, just pushing the contrast to try to bring out the stars and emphasize the areas of the Milky Way here that you can see. So a little bit more work that I've done on contrast is here, just added a little bit of a tone curve. You can see the lights have gone a little bit stronger, the darks have gone a little bit darker. Let's just put this slight S curve in there. And then this is capture sharpening. It's a sharpening that I add to all of my raw files. So at the lowest possible radius, but the highest possible detail and an amount of 25, it just gives it a little bit more crispiness on the edges. And I've just done a tiny little bit of noise reduction there. And that's pretty much it for Lightroom. And then the image was opened in Photoshop, where I did the final work and the final touches to the image. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. You can see on the right all of the adjustments that I made on different layers. And this for me is the power of Photoshop, the ability to be able to use different layers, and it's why it's basically the cornerstone, it's the foundation of most of my image processing, and I do the majority of my image processing in Photoshop. So let's just work through what I did on this image after I'd imported it, after I was editing it from Lightroom. So the first thing was to add more contrast using an adjustment curve layer. You can see there I've brightened the whole image. Certainly wanted to bring out the lights, because that's kind of emphasized the Milky Way here. We can see a lot more of the Milky Way. Then I've added another adjustment layer just to put a little bit more contrast in. I then flattened those layers so I could open it up in NYX Color Effects Pro, where I used principally the Pro Contrast tool and the skylight filter. I wanted to bring a little bit of warmth, a little bit more warmth into the sky, and the Pro Contrast tool again allowed me to bring out this nebula here in the Milky Way. What it's also done is brightened up the foreground here, the cliffs and the rocks on the beach, which I didn't actually want. But I was only really working on the sky at that point, so my next layer was a burn layer, just to darken down the foreground and remove the detail there, because I felt the image was much stronger when we were just really working with the shapes of the cliffs. I then used a couple of dodge layers, again, just to bring out the Milky Way a little bit more, and also the torchlight there, just to make these bright areas in the Milky Way a little bit stronger. And then what I noticed was, obviously there's a difference here between these tones in the sky, which are quite blue, and the warmer tones here. This is because just on this cliff here there's a lighthouse, and I was getting quite a lot of light pollution from that. So I opened another layer in Camera Raw, which allows me to make all of the same kind of adjustments that you can make in Lightroom, but on a Photoshop layer. And what I did there is I just evened out the tones, and also took away the green in this rock. You can see there's quite a green tone there, so I neutralized that to get that nice. And then I applied a mask there and painted out this area here. So the adjustments that I made in warming up the sky and neutralizing the greens didn't apply there, so that stayed the same. And then the final touch was just a little bit more contrast to finish the image off. And that's it. That's all I thought the image needed, and that's the finished version. So I hope that's been helpful. That's how I shoot stars, basically. It's not my best ever star image. It was just really a first attempt with the Fuji X-T2, and I was really quite impressed with how well it handled the stars. Hopefully next time I can find a better composition, and I can find somewhere with a little bit less light pollution, although that is really quite difficult on the coast of Portugal, because you're never far away from a town or a village or some lighthouse or something that's basically giving off a lot of light. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, and take care.